Throughout this class, we will enter every program into processing by typing it into processing's own text editor in the middle of the processing window. Let's take a look at that. Here's a typical sketch in processing. This is just a one-line sketch. I've saved it. I called it Editor Demo. And we can see in the text window that there are some nice features. For example, the color coding. We have orange and blue and black text. It all happens automatically. The text editor in the middle of the processing window is a perfectly nice text editor. We've already seen it has features like cut and copy and paste. There's search and replace, undo and redo, the standard things that you would expect. Nevertheless, many professional programmers have a text editor of their own that they prefer to use, not the one that's built into processing. And who can blame them? If there's a program you've been using for 5 or 10 or 20 years, or there's a new program that just perfectly matches your style and how you like to edit, well then of course you want to use the text editor you're used to. Well, the good news is processing will let you use any text editor to write your code. You don't have to use this one. Let me show you how. Here's processing's preferences window. And we get to this by going to the processing menu bar, choose Processing Preferences. Notice that the fourth checkbox down is named Use External Editor. That's the checkbox that does all the magic. So I'm going to turn that on and press OK. Here's the same sketch from before, only there's been a change. Notice that the text editor window now has a light bluish grayish wash over the face. That's telling us that processing is ignoring the keyboard. I'm hitting keys on my keyboard right now and nothing is happening in the processing window. As far as it's concerned, you're using an external editor. Well, terrific. Let's use an external editor. I'll open up this code with something else. Here's a window from TextEdit. That's the standard bare bones text editor that ships with every Macintosh. If you're on a Windows computer, you probably know of Notepad, which is the Windows version of a simple bare bones text editor. So I'm just going to open up the PDE file associated with this sketch. So here's my standard dialog box. Here's my sketch named Editor Demo, which I've already saved. We open it up. And here's the file editordemo.pde. Now you might wonder how I could open this with a text editor. Well, let's go ahead and do it. I'll select it and press open. And we get another window up in the corner. So I'll tell you what, let me reorganize these windows. I'll close the one we're not using. I'll move this guy up. Maybe I'll make him a little bit shorter. We don't need that many lines. And I'll move this guy down. So this window on the bottom half of the screen is TextEdit. And you may or may not be able to read the text in there. I'm going to quickly make the font bigger so we can read it. So here I made the text larger, and I also expanded the window a little bit so we could see it all. So I asked, how could I open a PDE file with my text editor? And the answer is that PDE files are just raw text files. They're just plain text. And the only reason that they don't have a TXT extension on them is so that we can double click them and start processing instead of a text editor. But if you open a .pde file with any text editor, it'll open right up because it's just plain raw text. So here we are looking at the program I Like Grapes in the text editor, and so of course we can change it. So let's add a second line. How about, now notice that print line is now underscored in red. That is my text editor telling me that I have a typo. It doesn't see print line in its dictionary. It doesn't know that I'm writing code. For all it knows, I'm writing a novel, or this is my shopping list, or I'm writing a poem, and it's just doing its regular spell check. Well, I know I'm writing code. I'm not going to worry about its spell checking for me, and I know I spelled print line correctly. So now I'm going to save this, and I'm going to use the keyboard shortcut. So I've just saved the file. But you'll notice that the processing window has not updated. How do I get processing to pay attention to the fact that I just changed the file? The answer is when you hit the Run button, processing looks at all of the files in your sketch and looks to see if any of them have been updated since the last time you hit Run. If any of them have changed, it goes out, gets the new contents of the file, loads it into its own text editor, and then that's what gets run. So we can change this file out here in the text editor all we want, make sure we save it, and then when we come up here to processing, once I hit Run, it will go off, it'll find the source file, editordemo.pde, it'll say, aha, you've changed it, it'll read it in, and that's what it will run. So let's go ahead and hit Run and watch that happen. Bam! It did exactly that. It read in the new file and ran it, and we can see it up there in the window. So this is great. Let's go ahead and close it. There's one important thing to keep in mind when you use an external text editor with processing, and that's to make sure that you always save your files as raw text. If you use, say, Microsoft Word to open up your file and you make some changes and you save it, Word by default will save its files in what's called doc format. And you can tell that because the file name will be something.doc. And that doc format, that's not raw text. That's not just the letters and numbers and symbols. That contains all the formatting information, bold and italic and pictures and page breaks and all that extra stuff for formatting the text. None of that can be in a processing sketch. It just wants the raw text. Typically, raw text files end with .txt. And so anything that ends with txt, you can open up and save. When I save with TextEdit, my default is raw text. There's another common format called RTF, and that stands for Rich Text Format. And Word saves that, and lots of other programs will save that. And RTF, like Doc, contains formatting information. It's got bold and italic and big fonts and changes of fonts and all that other stuff. Don't use that for processing. Always make sure, whatever program it is that you're using, that you save your files in text format. And then you'll be just fine. If you don't, processing will give you an error. It'll say, I can't read my own sketch anymore, and you'll have to go back and fix it. So every editor program is different, but make sure you save it in text format. Now there's one downside to using an external editor, and let's look at that by putting an error into our program. So I'm going to write a couple more lines of printout. So if I run this, if I save it and then run the program, everything's going to work great. So let's make an error. I'm going to deliberately delete the T. Now we have println, that is a nothing. Processing is going to have an error with that. So I save the file. I just used the keyboard shortcut to save. And now I'm going to come up to processing and I'm going to run. And sure enough, it loads in the file the way I want it to, but it found an error. Now, if we're inside of processing, we know exactly where the error is. We see it. It's highlighting it for us in yellow. And if the processing editor were turned on, I could just click right here where there's a problem and type the letter T. But I can't do that with the external editor turned on because processing is ignoring my keystrokes in this window. What I have to do is eyeball this error and say, oh, yeah, okay, the line that's having a problem is called kiwi fruit is yummy, or that's in the line. Then I have to look into my text editor and look through it and try to find that line. If your program is only 4 lines long, that's easy. If your program is 800 lines long, that can become a drag. So that can be a problem. There's one thing comes to our rescue here is this line number. Processing prints out the line number where the cursor is. When it finds an error, it shows you the line number of the error. And so in this case, it's telling us that the error is on line 3, and that makes it easier for us to go back to our text editor and look at line 3. And sure enough, the third line of the text is the one with the problem. If you have a program that is 1,800 lines long, and there's a problem at line 1312, that thing will put 1312 in the corner, and then you can either use your scroll bar, or some text editors actually let you say, go to line 1312, bam, it takes you there, and now you can fix the error. So if you like using external editors, that's the way to do it. You can have as many editors as you like open. You can have as many tabs as you want in your program, and you can edit with external editors that you know and love.